And then we're starting a new series today. Man, I'm fired up about this one. It's called Together, Following Jesus in Community, right? So all that kind of links together. And here's the reality is that we're going to go on a bit of a journey together. And this is a journey that I personally have been in for the last few years, and I've been trying to learn a bunch of stuff. I'm going to share some of that with you today. And I really feel like this series of conversations is going to be a foundational series for our campus. When we think about kind of what's important to us and we look back, we're going to look back and be like, yeah, I remember when we had those set of conversations and that kind of marked us as a people. And so we want to approach this conversation from that perspective. And I just want to encourage you, if you're around, if you're in town for the next several weeks, if you could do your very best to try to be here and be kind of in the conversations. If you've been watching online, consider coming in maybe for this one and actually physically try to be present if you haven't done that yet. If you're out of town, catch up online if you need to, of course. But I think this is just going to be a very, very important piece in who we become as a church, as a campus. And one of the things we're going to really look deeply at is kind of the reality of how we change and how impact happens through us, right? So how we change and how impact happens through us. And a lot of times we can get to a point where we're ready to make a decision, and we might have even made some decisions, right? We went through a series last several weeks called Unstuck, and a bunch of us made decisions. And then we're kind of left with the question of, what do I do now, right? How do I move on from here? And what are the next set of steps that help me move more in that direction, right? It's one thing to make a decision. It's another thing to know, what do I do after? And so we want to talk about that part. What do I do after? And how does it actually work? How does growth and change and impact actually happen? And how does it happen in us? And how does it happen through us? And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to dive into a conversation all around that. Today, all we're going to do is kind of give a bit of the big picture, and we're going to look at a few important things that Jesus said that are pretty mind-blowing to me, at least, and I think they're going to be hopefully helpful and mind-blowing to you. I want to warn you a little bit. We're not going to get to all the answers today, right? We're just kind of opening the conversation up, and then over the next several weeks, we're gonna keep unpacking it and giving more and more tools on the how. Okay, sound good? All right, here we go. We're gonna jump into it. I want to look at this passage in John chapter 15. And so if you have a Bible with you, you can open up to that chapter in the Bible, John chapter 15. If you don't have a Bible with you, you can grab one from underneath the chairs there, or look on your phone. If you haven't downloaded YouVersion, that is a phenomenal app. You can have the Bible on your phone at all times if you don't have that yet. Here's what we're going to read here and kind of catch some of the context of what Jesus is talking about. Here's what he says in John 15. We'll just read through 1 through 5 and we'll talk about it a little bit. He says, I'm the true vine and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. He says, you are already clean because of the word I've spoken to you. And then he says, remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. He says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Okay. Loaded passage. We're going to take a minute and kind of unpack this. So first I want us to get the vibe of where and when this is being said. So Jesus is facing his last hours on the planet. All right? He's literally moving towards his death. He knows that. And it would be that kind of urgency and that sense of importance that he would be talking to his disciples on the way kind of to his death, his final mission. And those words, these words that we just read and the ones around it would have an enormous gravity for Jesus. If you've ever been close to somebody as they're nearing the end, even as they are in the weeks or the days or the months before they know kind of their time is running out, there begins to be this buildup of urgency that I need to say some things. I need to make sure you hear me. This is important. This is on my heart. This is on my mind. This matters. When we hear this is what Jesus is. This is kind of where he is. This is what he's saying. He's saying, I want you to grab hold of this. And this picture of the vine and the branches is something that would be very common in the understanding of the disciples, right? The people that he's talking to. They would have known this, and they would have understood that there would be vines. I'll kind of draw it on the whiteboard here. That there would be these vines that would grow up and make almost kind of like a T, right? And on these vines, man, I'm good at art. That's fantastic, right? On these vines, there would be these branches that would kind of come off of the vines, and grapes would grow off of them, right? The disciples they would have seen these. There's a good chance that they would be walking by these as he's describing this. And he's going to, again, as Jesus does so masterfully, he's going to burn this image into their minds. Never again will the disciples be able to walk by the vine and the branches where grapes are growing and be able to see it the same. It's going to be part of their thinking, it's part of their wiring. And part of what is going to be picked up here is this, is here's what he's saying. We just read it, but let's describe it and explain it a little bit. He says, hey, the vine part, that's me. I'm the vine. My Father, he's the one over and above the whole thing. He's the gardener. He's the one that works on and prunes and lifts up the grapes and works with what's happening with the vine to make it as fruitful as possible. That's what my Father's doing. And then he would say, this part right here, this is you. You're the branch. Your role is to remain and stay connected to me. Your connection to me is not just like a minor thing. He's going to basically say it's the whole deal. Like this is the whole thing. Apart from me, you can do nothing, Jesus would say. Hey, disciples, he's thinking in his mind, I'm going to go disconnect. I'm going to go to the cross. They're going to be left behind. And what I want them to remember is the way things happen in and through my followers who I love, who I've invested my life, who I've walked with. The way things happen for you, the way you impact the world, the way change is going to continue is that you stay connected to me. You remain in me. You abide in me. You live life with me. And remember, right, this is the word, right? Remain or abide or dwell. It's all the same idea, right? But you live with me. Live life with me every day. Now, hear it from their perspective. They just did this. They just live life with Jesus. Physically, with him, right? A bunch of us have imagined that. If you grew up in the church or you've thought about Jesus and who he is and was, and you thought, man, what would it be like to be with him? They did that. And now he's going to tell them, I want you to keep doing that. I'm going to go away, and as I go away, I want you to continue to remain in me and with me and live life with me. And frankly, that's the only way you're going to be able to really have any spiritual impact. It's the only way any real change is going to happen in and through you. Okay, big deal. When I started to understand what was happening here in this passage, it started to make a bunch of stuff make sense to me. Here's why. I've said this to you guys a bunch. I didn't grow up in church, and I didn't always understand how this all worked. how does this all happen, right? And when I began to learn about the Bible and learn about who Jesus was and his mission that he's called us to, I was so fired up about it. I just wanted to tell everybody. And as I started to pursue doing it, I didn't know how to do it. How do I do it right? How do I do it for real? And so all I would do is I began to do what I knew to do, which is basically to go tell everybody about Jesus and to begin to do things the way I've always done them in kind of my own strength and my own power and my own ability. And what I ended up with was, very, very mixed results. When I came to know Jesus, my response was, man, I need to tell everybody about Jesus, and I need to tell everybody what they're doing wrong, right? That was super effective, by the way, right? And if you're like, that's what I do, maybe you should stop. I'm just saying, okay? It's just a thing to think about, right? So what I was doing and what I didn't know I was doing is I was trying to generate fruit. I didn't understand this. I didn't understand that if I wanted fruit to happen, if I wanted impact to happen, I didn't need to make it happen. I didn't need to force it. What I needed to do is I needed to remain in Jesus. I needed to pull Jesus, so to say, into the conversation. Really what I didn't really need to pull him into the conversation. I needed to recognize that he's already in the room. That wherever I go, Jesus is already there with me. That if I'm a follower of Jesus, when I go to work, Jesus goes to work. And when I go home, Jesus goes home. And when I'm on a phone call, Jesus is everywhere I go, Jesus is going with me. And Jesus is like, yep, this is how this thing works, is you want fruit, right? If you want fruit to happen, here's some really sweet grapes, okay? If you want fruit to happen, what you want to do is you want to remain in me. Don't go try to grunt and make this thing happen. Do this part. And here's what I think happens. This is what happened in my life, and I bet you've had some experience with this maybe too, if you've tried to do some of this. I got some grapes here. These look pretty similar, don't they? Yeah, you're like, Ryan's pretty far away, man. I don't know. So here's the thing. These are like real, legitimate, actual grapes. These are the kind that you go buy right where you shop, and they taste good, and they're juicy and wonderful. And if you freeze them, they're like magically good, right? Who likes frozen grapes, right? I like you people. The rest of you, I'm not sure about, okay? This set of grapes, these aren't grapes. This is some weird thing that looks like grapes that I got from Amazon. And when I opened the bag, it smelled like weird chemicals, okay? These are plastic, synthetic things that look a lot like grapes, right? And from far away, you could look at both of these and be like, yeah, grapes, right? But if you got a little bit closer, you'd be like, well, those look really good. These ones, oh, there goes one. Casualty, right? If you got a little closer, you look at them and be like, that's like a legitimate grape. And you'd see some of them are imperfect. They're warped. They're messed up a little bit. But they're good. They're grapes. They're real. If I ate this would bring nourishment to my body and joy to my soul, right? If you got a little bit closer to this one, you'd be like, oh, that looks like grapes. Wait a minute. That doesn't look like grapes. This is synthetic, toxic garbage, right? Why does it smell so weird? And what you would realize is these are two very, very, very different things that appear to be the same thing. Here's why this is such a big deal. In 2024, here in America, right where we live, most of us, when we think about how life works and what matters, appearance is very important. These seem to be the same, they're basically the same. If I seem like I'm the real deal, it's kind of good enough to be the real deal. It's basically, look how close it is. It's basically the same thing. These are completely different things. One is, I'm not even sure what would happen to my body if I ate this, right? I would probably be hospitalized. This one is actually going to give me life because it has life in it. Just take a small moment to recognize, like, this came from the ground. Like there's sunlight and water and nourishment and some stuff that I don't even understand, right? Came up through a vine and it gave fruit to this plant thing that happened, and there's grapes. And apart from the connection to the source, you don't have this. I don't have this. I can't have it. And when I fake it, when I try to be the real deal and pretend like I'm the real deal and kind of attach it and say, see, I'm the real deal. We're like, this is very strange. This is a strange thing that happens. And here's the thing, is what God is looking to do, the Father, is he's saying, I want the whole world to know me. I want the whole world to know my Son. That's why I sent him. I want to be with you. Since the whole thing got messed up in the garden, right in the very beginning, God has been trying to get back to his people. And we are the ones that stiff arm over and over. I'm not doing it. I don't want it. I don't want it your way. And God would look and say, I'm trying to pull you into relationship. I want to be with you. And here's the crazy part, is the way that God has chosen to make himself known to the whole world is he's done a couple things on purpose, and they're kind of wild. Well, what he's done is he sent his Son. He sent his Son to the planet to live a perfect life and die an innocent death and rise from the dead. And his Son began this, the church, right? Where God, the life source of God, is now available to people, and Jesus is including people into that all the time, right? And what he's saying is, I want people to live life with me, and when they do that, right, they're going to bear fruit. That's what happens automatically. This is wild. Look what it says in a few verses down in the passage. It says, this is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. The way that God gets glory, the way that people know him, the way that people know what he's like, the way that people start to understand him is they look at people that are producing fruit, that are connected to the vine, connected to Jesus. And when they see this, the fruit, they're like, oh, this is what God's like. And all the math starts to connect. This is what Jesus would say, people will know you're my followers by your love. What I think we have to do is we have to make a determination. And the determination is this, is that we have to abandon any route that settles with being synthetic fruit. To say, I won't pursue that, and I won't allow it, and I don't want to become it. I don't want anything to do with it. That's not close. That's something completely different. I would much rather wrestle around with trying to have bruised fruit that's not so ideal and let God prune me and make me even more fruitful than to try to show up and have pretend fruit, fake fruit. You say, Ryan, what is the difference here? What does it look like to be synthetic versus real? Here's what I think it looks like. When I came into the church, I told you I was super fired up about my faith, and I heard passionate teaching from people that believed what Jesus was saying. And I watched some of those people that heard what Jesus was saying, and they were like, I'm in. I want that. I want to do that. And then I heard other people, right? I'm a brand new follower of Jesus. I heard other people, and what they were doing is they were not actually taking these things to heart. They were critiquing a style of church, right? Or they did what some of you did. They heard a passage, and maybe some of you did this just now. When you heard it was John 15, you thought, oh, I know that one. I know that. I could quote that for you, Ryan. Good job. Right? Or they thought it was about knowing a lot of information and having a lot of theological terms at their recall. Or they thought it was about trying to be a good person. Or they thought it was about trying to have an American impact or a version of a country where Jesus is doing something far greater than all that. Jesus would look at us and say, here's real fruit, man. Here's what happens automatically in you when you do this. When you recognize that I'm in the room, you see people different. You see your boss different. Your boss isn't some loser that's making me do all this stupid work. Right? He's a soul. She's a soul that Jesus died for. I don't know why I have to do all this. I hate my job. I can't wait to quit. God placed me here. Jesus, you placed me here for a season, and I don't work for them. I work for you. Stupid class. I never go to school. Lame. I get the opportunity, Jesus. You are the one who goes with me into school. There's things I don't like to do, and I'm choosing to do those as an act of worship to you because you're with me. I'm living life with you. I'm remaining with you. I'm abiding with you. And guys, listen, what I'm describing right now, I've been practicing and not doing, I would even say well, for a few years. But here's what I see, the difference. The more I recognize that Jesus is with me, the more automatic and natural it is that fruit happens. It just happens. And you guys know how this works, right? If you have kids and they're not doing the right thing, and then you walk into the room, what happens? They stop doing that wrong thing, don't they? If there's something they know you love to do, and then they're drawn to it. So some of us, we're adults, and we do things because we know our parents would love to have us do that. Right? You ever hear that? Jesus is in my heart, but grandpa's in my bones? It's Pete Scazzaro quote, phenomenal quote. We do all kinds of things because we know what it's like to have somebody in the room and do something differently because somebody's in the room. Jesus is saying this, there's one thing that really matters. I want you to get it. You can do all kinds of things. You can memorize stuff, you can go to things, blah, blah. If a group of people, as if an individual, if a family makes a decision, a determination to not be the synthetic thing, but to say, I'm going to live life with Jesus, he's promised us that fruit will happen. You will bear fruit. It's inevitable. Why? Well, I'm tied into the source where life comes from. My role is to respond in this connection, this vital connection where life can flow in me and through me and make me something that I would never be on my own. When we start to get into the how, all of the conversation about how has to center in here. This is the one thing that really matters. As we start to understand that and practice it and live in it, the beauty is the pressure's off. Guys, listen, the pressure's off. Some of you are feeling enormous pressure. I got to be perfect. I'm not going to be perfect. Some of you haven't come back to church until recently because you were feeling so guilty for messing it up and not doing the. Jesus would look at you and say, hey, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. I'll give you rest. Bring me. Bring me into the discouragement. Bring me into your failure. Bring me into that relationship. Bring me into that weakness. But God, it's disgusting. It's ugly. He won't go and, man, he's already done it. He's already paid for the ugliest thing that I've ever done, you and me combined. And what he's done is his death and his burial, his resurrection has allowed this as an opportunity to exist, that I could be with him. And what will happen is in time, there will be fruit. Joy doesn't come from me mustering joy. Joy comes from me recognizing Jesus is there the entire time. Peace, love. See, I can try to do 1,000 things, or I can try to do one thing. The one thing that Jesus is asking is this: walk with me. Bring me into it. Anything you have to do to remember that I'm in the room. When you go to the office, I'm in the room. When you go to the job site, I'm there. When you go to the tow truck, when you go to school, when you go to college, when you go into your dorm room, when you go into that phone call, when you go into your family room, when you go into that argument, when you go to make a sinful decision, when you go to do something good that is in secret and nobody else sees, I'm in all of that. I want to be in the reality is he is there for all of those moments. A bunch of us grew up thinking that what following Jesus looked something like this. I should do some religious activities. Almost caught it. Just slowing down. I should do a bunch of religious activities. And the really spiritual things happen in a building somewhere, at church. And if I don't want to go to hell, I better not mess up really bad. And I better look like I'm doing the right stuff. Guys, that's not what we're talking about. And I'm sorry that it was so deeply misrepresented. See, what church does, what community does, what my interaction with the Bible does, is it helps me to do the one thing. And the one thing is this: living life with Jesus every day. Right? I'm glad that you got it. Right? There's one. Right? That's it. If I realize Jesus is in the conversation, guess what? I'll share my faith. In the midst of disaster, I'll find my faith. It's the same thing over and over and over again. I'm having a relationship and a presence with somebody I can't see, but by faith I believe. And when I do that, even deeply imperfectly, Jesus himself told me, I'll bear fruit. Thank you. I'll bear fruit. Your impact for life, you want to see lives change through you? You want to see things happen and change in you that you never thought could change? Guys, the answer is not from slapping on some synthetic, some plastic. The answer is letting God do it little by little. And things will change in us that we didn't believe were possible to change. He will save us. Not just from hell, from us, from me. And here's the most beautiful part, is there's a bunch of people that will bear fruit in their lives for the glory of the Father because you stayed close to Jesus and let him bear fruit in yours. Ryan, God can't use me like that. He said it. He said this is what's going to happen. I didn't say it. I'm not making it up. Ryan, I sinned too much. He didn't put any requirements, any limiters on this. He let the ugly and the broken and the marginalized and the sinful abide and connect and be joined to him. That they would bear fruit. That the world would know what the Father is really like. That's what God's trying to do in you. And in me. And in us. And I want us to begin to get our imaginations going on what can happen in a group of people that make a determination and say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to fake it. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not even going to try. I'm going to live life with Jesus and believe that he's going to do this in me. I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to do one thing with a group of people. I'm going to do one thing with the risen Lord. We're going to do this together. By faith, believing that in time, he will cause the increase. See, guys, this is the missing piece for me. I couldn't connect the dots. Make disciples of all nations. How? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. How? This connection is the how. It's how disciples are made of all nations. It's how we love the Lord our God. The minutes and the days and the moments where we're living life with him, connected to the vine. Because it's a game changer. See how it's something completely different. The message isn't, do you want to go to heaven and not go to hell and say a prayer and then do some church stuff until you die? The message is, do you want life in you? Do you want life to flow through you? Do you want the life and power and purpose of God to be unleashed in you? Is that what you want? Do you want saved so that you can become supernatural? Not because the branch is anything, but because the vine is everything. And the fruit will happen in the most broken, in the most needy, in the most rejected, and the most forgotten, the most abused. It doesn't matter how mangled the branch. What matters is the point of connection. Living life with Jesus. Guys, I want you to take this journey with me. I don't even totally know where it goes. I just know it's the right way. Right? The course of this series, we're going to walk through some simple things that we know for sure strengthen and fire that connection. In fact, there's three. We call them the big three. We're going to unpack those big three and talk about what does it look like to do this and do it in community. And what would happen if a group of people did that? Maybe the world in my life and my family and my family tree would be a little different. Maybe radically different. But it starts with that determination. To say, Amazon grapes, I'm done. Okay, I'm done with that. I want the real deal or nothing. Guys, as the band comes up, we'd love for you to wrestle that through. To think about where you stand with Jesus. And do you actually believe this? That this is the one and true way? Would you determine to land where Jesus lands as he spoke to us on the way to the cross? The band comes out. Would you bow your heads, close your eyes, and pray with me? We'll sing and worship together. Lord, I'm not sure why you want to be with us so bad. Lord, you don't need us. That's for sure. But you have chosen to move towards us and to include us. And to bring your power and your love, your supernatural peace and joy into our lives and into our experience. That we can be a vessel of all of that into the lives of other people. God, I pray you would raise up a harvest of fruit here in us as individuals, in us as families. That you yourself, Lord, would be the gardener, as you said you are, and cause us to bear even more fruit for your name and your fame and your glory. And Lord, we want that all to be a thank you for what you have done for us in Christ. Lord, we thank you and we love you. Meet us here, even now.